The crisp air of an early spring evening in Atlanta buzzed with the remnants of the day's excitement. Emory University's campus was a hive of activity, with students milling about, discussing the day's sports match. But amidst this ordinary college of college life, a singular event was unfolding, one that would leave a lasting scar on the community. Shannon Malayzia, a bright-eyed freshman with dreams larger than the sprawling campus she roamed, had just vanished. She was the kind of student who left an impression, intelligent, ambitious, with a contagious enthusiasm for life. Her disappearance was as mysterious as it was sudden. Earlier that day, Shannon had been among the throngs of students at the match, cheering and laughing with friends. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, a sense of foreboding settled over her usual cheerfulness. She left the match alone, her steps quick and purposeful towards the parking lot. Her car, a black Nissan 280ZX, a gift from her loving parents, was found later that night, abandoned. The driver's door was ajar, the keys still dangling in the ignition, as if beckoning someone to drive away. Inside, everything seemed normal. Her purse rested on the passenger seat, her university ID tucked inside, untouched. The car stood as a silent witness to Shannon's abrupt disappearance. It was as if she had been plucked from existence, leaving behind only the cold metallic shell of her vehicle and a myriad of unanswered questions. The university, once a place of vibrant life and youthful energy, now held an eerie stillness, a community shaken by the sudden loss of one of its own. In the days that followed, whispers and rumors swirled around the campus like autumn leaves in the wind. Some spoke of seeing a shadowy figure near the parking lot, others of strange cars lingering in the area. But nothing concrete emerged, only the haunting void left by Shannon's absence. As night fell on the day of her disappearance, the campus police began their routine patrols, oblivious to the unfolding tragedy. Shannon's empty car sat silently in the parking lot, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the mysteries it holds. The days following Shannon Malayzia's baffling disappearance saw a flurry of activity, but not the kind her anxious family had hoped for. The local police, often swamped with cases in the bustling city of Atlanta, met the news of Shannon's vanishing with a dismissive attitude that would later haunt them. In their eyes, Shannon was just another college student who had perhaps chosen to flee the pressures of academic life. They clung to the theory that she had run away, despite the protests from those who knew her best. Her car, found abandoned yet undamaged, seemed to support their assumption. There were no signs of struggle, no bloodstains, nothing to indicate a violent abduction. To the police, it was a simple case of a young adult seeking an escape. But for Shannon's family and friends, this explanation was unthinkable. Shannon was not one to shirk responsibility or to leave without a word. She was a beacon of determination and ambition, her life meticulously planned towards her dream of a career in law or politics. Her sudden and unexplained disappearance was out of character, a glaring red flag that something was terribly wrong. Her parents, racked with worry, urged the police to delve deeper, to look beyond the surface. But their pleas fell on deaf ears, lost in the bureaucratic shuffle of a busy city police department. Days turned into weeks, and still, the police maintained their stance. No foul play was suspected. This lack of urgency was a blow to Shannon's loved ones. Each passing day without news brought a growing sense of despair. The vibrant young woman they knew, who had always been just a phone call away, had vanished into thin air, and the world seemed to carry on, as if nothing had happened. Shannon's parents were left to grapple with a painful reality. Their daughter had disappeared, and the very people they hoped would search for her were turning a blind eye. It was a bitter pill to swallow, a realization that in the eyes of the law, Shannon was just another statistic, her case just another file in an overstuffed cabinet. As the days stretched into weeks, the initial shock of Shannon's disappearance gave way to a deep, gnawing fear. With no leads to follow and no help from the authorities, her family began to lose hope. The vibrant, ambitious young woman they loved seemed to have slipped through the cracks of a system too busy to notice. In the heart of Miami, Under the Floridian sun, Shannon Malayzia's story began. Born on October 20, 1974, she entered the world as a beacon of hope and joy for her parents. 5 years later, her sister Monique joined the family, completing their happy quartet. From their earliest days, the Malayzia sisters were immersed in a culture of learning and achievement. Their parents, firm believers in the power of education, instilled in them the importance of academic excellence. Shannon, the elder of the two, took this lesson to heart. She was not just a student. She was a learner in the truest sense, absorbing knowledge like a sponge and excelling in every subject. Her school years were a tapestry of honors and accolades. Shannon's report cards were a sea of A's, and her name was a regular feature on the honor roll. But her brilliance was not confined to the classroom alone. She thrived in extracurricular activities, from debate clubs to sports teams, always leading, always excelling. As she grew, so did her aspirations. Politics and law beckoned to her, fields where she could make a real difference. She was more than just a student. She was a young woman with a vision for her future and the tenacity to make it happen. Her high school years were a crescendo of achievements. Shannon captivated audiences with her eloquence as the head of the debate club. Her voice, strong and clear, echoed in the halls of Congress and the General Assembly of the United Nations, where she spoke as part of special educational programs. These experiences solidify her resolve to pursue a career in law, to stand up for justice and truth in the highest courts of the land. The pursuit of this dream led Shannon to apply to several prestigious universities. Her impeccable grades and laundry list of extracurricular achievements made her a top candidate. Among the offers that flooded in, she chose Emory University in Atlanta. The decision was swayed not just by its academic reputation, but also by a generous grant of $15,000 annually, a sum that would ease the financial burden of her education. As Shannon stepped into the world of higher education, her eyes were full of dreams and her heart full of hope. Emory University was not just a school. It was the gateway to her future, a place where she could hone her skills and prepare for a life of impact. Little did she know that this bright beginning was a prelude to a dark and unfathomable mystery. As the summer sun gave way to the crisp hues of autumn, Shannon Malayzia embarked on her journey at Emory University. The campus, sprawling with historic buildings and lush green spaces, was a far cry from her bustling hometown of Miami. It was here, amidst the Gothic-style architecture and vibrant student life, that Shannon hoped to lay the foundation for her ambitious future. From her very first day, Shannon immersed herself in university life with the same fervor that had marked her earlier academic pursuits. The campus quickly became her second home. She navigated its corridors and lawns with a sense of belonging that only comes with profound contentment. Emory was not just an educational institution for Shannon. It was a melting pot of ideas, cultures, and opportunities. She attended lectures that broadened her horizons, participated in discussions that sharpened her intellect, and formed friendships that deepened her understanding of the world. Her major in political science was more than a field of study. It was a passion that consumed her, feeding her dreams of one day playing a pivotal role in the justice system. Despite receiving a significant grant, Shannon's work ethic and sense of responsibility led her to take a part-time job. A few kilometers from her dormitory lay a softball field that beckoned for staff, and Shannon answered the call. Her role was simple yet important, keeping score during the games. It was a job that suited her well, combining her love for sports with a sense of community service. On March 26, 1994, a scheduling error at work meant Shannon had to fill in unexpectedly. She arrived at the stadium around 8:40 a.m., her mind likely preoccupied with the day's tasks. The hours passed in a blur of activity, the cheers and thuds from the field melding into the background of her routine. After her shift ended, Shannon's usual practice was to stop by a nearby gas station to grab a soda, a small but comforting ritual. That day, she drove off as usual, but this time, she would never return. It was a day that began like any other, with no sign of the darkness that was about to engulf her life. Her absence left a void that was felt deeply by her new friends and classmates. The news of her disappearance rippled through the campus, turning the once vibrant atmosphere somber. Questions abounded, rumors swirled, but answers were nowhere to be found. As the sun set on that fateful day, Shannon's car was discovered abandoned at the gas station. The keys still in the ignition and the doors unlocked, it stood as a silent testament to the abruptness of her disappearance. It was a scene that would haunt the Emory campus, a grim reminder of the fragility of safety and the mystery that now shrouded one of their own. The day Shannon Malayzia disappeared was etched in the minds of those who knew her, a haunting memory that refused to fade. The initial disbelief that gripped Shannon's friends soon turned into a frantic search for answers. The university, once a bustling hub of youthful energy, was now clouded with a sense of dread and uncertainty. As night crept over the campus, a sense of urgency grew among Shannon's friends. Athena, Shannon's roommate, felt the first pangs of worry when Shannon did not return to their dormitory. It was unlike Shannon to stay out without notice, and with each passing hour, Athena's concern deepened. By morning, with no sign of Shannon, Athena made the difficult call to Shannon's parents, setting in motion a series of events that would unveil the grim reality. Shannon's younger sister, Monique, answered the phone, her voice tinged with confusion. She hadn't heard from Shannon in days, a fact that only heightened the concern. Athena, now gripped by a sense of foreboding, shared the news of Shannon's disappearance with two mutual friends. Determined to find their friend, they embarked on a search across the university grounds. Their search led them to the softball field where Shannon worked. The field, usually a place of cheers and camaraderie, now held a different meaning. It was the last place Shannon was seen, a fact that weighed heavily on their hearts. As they scoured the area, a troubling sight caught their eye at a nearby gas station. There, abandoned and out of place, was Shannon's black Nissan 280 ZX. Approaching the vehicle, a wave of unease washed over them. The keys were still in the ignition, the doors unlocked, a stark contrast to the careful and responsible Shannon they knew. It was a scene that spoke of haste and disruption, raising more questions than answers. Shannon's car, left in such a vulnerable state, was a tangible symbol of the nightmare that was unfolding. Her friend's discovery transformed the situation from a mere concern to a palpable emergency. The car's presence at the gas station, so close to the softball field, suggested that whatever had happened to Shannon had occurred shortly after her shift. The friends immediately contacted the police, hoping for a swift and thorough investigation. However, the response they received was disheartening. The officers, upon inspecting the vehicle, found no obvious signs of a struggle or foul play. Their cursory examination led them to a hasty, and, as it would later prove, erroneous conclusion. There was nothing to suggest that a crime had occurred. To the dismay of Shannon's friends, the police did not even bother to fingerprint the car or conduct a detailed search of the area. Instead, they suggested that the vehicle be moved to the university parking lot, a request that Athena, in her state of shock and confusion, complied with. The police's lackluster response to the situation was a bitter blow to those who knew Shannon best. Her car, left abandoned with the keys still in it, was a silent scream for help that went unheeded. It was a moment that marked the beginning of a long and arduous journey for Shannon's family and friends, a journey fraught with frustration, fear, and the relentless pursuit of the truth. The news of Shannon's disappearance sent shockwaves through her family. Her parents, already anxious from Athena's call, were now engulfed in a maelstrom of fear and confusion. The car discovery at the gas station was a tangible reminder of their worst nightmare coming true. It contradicted every belief they held about their daughter's character and habits. Shannon was conscientious and careful. Abandoning her car with the keys still in it was completely out of character for her. As hours turned into days with no word from Shannon, her parents' worry transformed into a desperate need for action. They could not fathom the police's indifference to their daughter's case. To them, it was clear that Shannon hadn't just run away. Something sinister had occurred. Determined to find their daughter, Shannon's parents embarked on a relentless campaign to locate her. They traveled to Atlanta, leaving behind their home and daily lives to focus solely on the search. They printed and distributed thousands of flyers with Shannon's photo, flooding the campus and city with her image. The flyers, emblazoned with Shannon's bright smile, became a common sight across Atlanta, a silent plea for her safe return. Shannon's father went a step further, renting a billboard to amplify their message. It was a bold move, designed to capture the attention of anyone who might have seen something on the day Shannon disappeared. Along with the billboard, a reward of $10,000 was offered for any information that could lead to finding Shannon. It was a significant sum, indicative of the family's desperation and determination. Meanwhile, the police's handling of the case remained lackluster. Despite the family's efforts, the authorities continued to treat Shannon's disappearance as a low-priority case. It was a frustrating reality for the Malayzia family, who felt increasingly alone in their quest for answers. As days turned into weeks, the lack of progress was disheartening. The bustling streets of Atlanta, once full of promise and opportunity for Shannon, now seemed cold and indifferent to her fate. Her family's pleas for help echoed in a void, met with silence and inaction. The Malayzia's resolve, however, remained unshaken. They clung to hope, fueled by the love for their daughter and the belief that somewhere, someone held the key to unraveling the mystery of Shannon's disappearance. Their fight to bring Shannon home continued, a testament to their unwavering love and the unbreakable bond of family. Months turned into years, and Shannon Malayzia's disappearance remained an unsolved mystery, a lingering question mark in the lives of her family and friends. The relentless search efforts, the flyers, the billboard, and the reward, nothing had brought them closer to finding Shannon. The case had grown cold, slipping gradually into the background of unsolved cases that haunted the Atlanta Police Department. However, a sudden and unexpected turn of events reignited the case, offering a glimmer of hope in the seemingly endless darkness. 12 years after Shannon's disappearance, an anonymous phone call to the police breathed new life into the investigation. The caller, a man whose voice was laced with mystery, claimed that the media had gotten a crucial detail wrong in their coverage of Shannon's disappearance. They had reported that Shannon was wearing green shorts on the day she vanished, but the caller insisted they were blue. More chillingly, he claimed to have Shannon with him, declaring he could keep her as long as he wanted. This call was a jolt to the stagnant investigation. The specific detail about Shannon's clothing and the audacity of the claim were enough to raise serious questions. Why would someone wait 12 years to make such a call? And how did he know about the color of Shannon's shorts, a detail that had not been widely publicized? The police, now faced with this perplexing new lead, began to reconsider the case. The initial theory of Shannon running away was cast into doubt. The possibility that she had been abducted, held against her will for over a decade, was a horrifying prospect that demanded immediate attention. The caller, however, remained elusive, a shadowy figure hiding behind the anonymity of a phone line. His motives were unclear, his identity unknown. But his call had achieved one crucial thing. It had brought Shannon's case back into the spotlight. Shannon's parents, who had never given up hope, felt a renewed sense of urgency. The call was a double-edged sword, a potential lead, but also a reminder of their daughter's prolonged absence. The mystery of Shannon's disappearance, which had receded into the background of their daily lives, was now once again at the forefront of their thoughts. The police, spurred into action by the call, revisited the case with a fresh perspective. They scored old files, re-examined evidence, and conducted new interviews. The anonymous call had opened a door that had long been closed, offering a possible path to the truth about Shannon's fate. As the investigation gained momentum, Shannon's family braced themselves for what might come. The years of waiting, of not knowing, had been a torturous journey. Now they dared to hope that the end of their long and painful quest might finally be in sight. In the renewed fervor of the investigation into Shannon Malayzia's disappearance, a significant development shifted the focus dramatically. a suspect emerged, an individual who had been in the periphery of the case all along, unnoticed and unscrutinized. Calvin Hinton, known among his peers as Bud. Bud, a 33-year-old mechanic at Delta Airlines and a part-time softball referee, was a familiar face at the field where Shannon worked. To the outside world, he appeared harmless, leading a seemingly normal life with a wife and involvement in his local church. But beneath this mundane exterior lurked a darker persona, one that had escaped the attention of the initial investigation. The discovery of Bud's potential involvement began with a seemingly innocuous piece of information. He had been at the softball field on the day of Shannon's disappearance and had left around the same time. This coincidence, however minor, was enough to pique the interest of the investigators. Further inquiry revealed unsettling details. Bud had requested to be replaced as a referee for the game on the day Shannon disappeared, citing a made-up family emergency. This behavior was out of character and raised suspicions. Why would Bud fabricate a reason to avoid refereeing a game, only to return to the field later that day? The investigators delved deeper, uncovering more about Bud's past. He had a history of criminal activity, a fact unknown to many who thought they knew him. This revelation was a turning point in the investigation, casting a shadow of doubt over his seemingly innocuous presence at the softball field. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, a chilling picture emerged. Bud's proximity to Shannon at the field, his peculiar behavior on the day of her disappearance, and his criminal past formed a compelling case against him. The police, now armed with this new information, intensified their focus on Bud, hoping to uncover evidence that could link him to Shannon's disappearance. Shannon's family, upon learning of this development, experienced a tumultuous mix of emotions. There was hope that the mystery of their daughter's fate might finally be solved, but also horror at the thought of what might have befallen her. The emergence of Bud as a suspect was a bitter reminder of the time lost, the years spent searching in vain while the answer might have been hiding in plain sight. As the investigation pressed on, the narrative of Shannon's disappearance began to change. No longer was she seen as a young woman who had potentially run away. Now she was a victim, possibly prey to a predator who had managed to evade suspicion for over a decade. The search for the truth about Shannon's fate entered a new, more ominous phase, with Bud at its center. The case against Calvin "Bud" Hinton, once a shadowy figure on the periphery of Shannon Malayzia's life, had now taken center stage. As the trial commenced, the air was thick with anticipation. Shannon's family, weary from years of searching and longing for closure, sat in the courtroom, holding onto a fragile thread of hope. Bud, the man who had hidden behind the guise of an ordinary life, was now exposed under the harsh lights of the courtroom. The prosecution painted a grim picture of a predator who had exploited his position as a softball referee to prey on vulnerable young women. They presented evidence of his criminal past, revealing a pattern of behavior that fit the profile of someone capable of abduction and worse. The case against Bud was built on a combination of circumstantial evidence and testimonies from prison inmates who claimed Bud had confided in them about his involvement in Shannon's disappearance. These testimonies were critical, providing a glimpse into Bud's psyche and his possible motives. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence was the anonymous call made 12 years after Shannon's disappearance, which had rekindled the investigation. The caller's knowledge of specific details about Shannon's attire on the day she vanished pointed towards someone with intimate knowledge of the case. The prosecution suggested that this call, potentially made by Bud himself, was a taunting gesture, a display of power and control over Shannon's fate. Throughout the trial, Shannon's family sat through harrowing testimonies and evidence presentations, each piece adding to the painful picture of their daughter's last known days. The absence of Shannon's body was a significant hurdle for the prosecution. Without concrete physical evidence linking Bud to the crime, the case hinged on the strength of the circumstantial evidence and the credibility of the inmate testimonies. Bud maintained his innocence throughout the trial, his defense team casting doubt on the reliability of the inmate testimonies and the lack of direct evidence. They argued that the prosecution's case was built on speculation and conjecture, not hard facts. The trial, which gripped the city of Atlanta, drew to a close with the jury faced with a daunting task. They were to determine the fate of a man accused of a heinous crime, without the definitive proof that usually accompanies such cases. The decision lay in their hands. Was the circumstantial evidence enough to convict Bud of Shannon's abduction and presumed murder? After days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Bud was found guilty, a decision that sent a wave of relief mixed with sorrow through the courtroom. For Shannon's family, the verdict was a form of justice, albeit incomplete. It was a recognition of their daughter's suffering, a validation of their years of anguish and tireless search for the truth. As Bud was led away, sentenced to life imprisonment, the Malayzia family was left to grapple with the reality of their loss. The trial had brought them answers, but it could not fill the void left by Shannon's absence. They had fought for justice, and in some measure, they had found it. But the pain of their loss remained, a wound that time could never fully heal. The conviction of Calvin Bud Hinton in the disappearance and presumed murder of Shannon Malayzia marked the end of a long, arduous chapter for her family and the Atlanta community. The courtroom, which had been a stage for the unfolding drama of justice and revelation, fell silent. The verdict brought a sense of closure, but it was a closure tinged with deep sorrow and lingering questions. Shannon's parents, while relieved that justice had been served, still faced the unbearable reality of their daughter's absence. The conviction did not bring Shannon back, nor did it fully explain the circumstances of her tragic fate. The question of where Shannon's remains were located remained unanswered, a haunting mystery that continued to torment her family. In the wake of the trial, Shannon's story became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the fragility of safety and the unpredictability of fate. Her disappearance and the subsequent investigation had exposed flaws in the initial police response, raising important questions about how missing persons cases are handled, especially those involving young adults. The Malayzia family, in their enduring grief, became advocates for change. They worked tirelessly to raise awareness about missing persons cases, emphasizing the importance of prompt and thorough investigations. Their efforts, born from their tragic loss, aimed to ensure that no other family would have to endure the same agonizing journey they have faced. Meanwhile, Bud's conviction, based largely on circumstantial evidence and inmate testimonies, left a segment of the community unsettled. Some questioned the fairness of the trial and the reliability of the evidence presented. The absence of Shannon's body was a gap that left room for doubt and speculation. Despite these lingering uncertainties, the legacy of Shannon Malayzia's life extended beyond the tragedy of her disappearance. Her ambition, her vibrant spirit, and her unfulfilled dreams left an indelible mark on those who knew her. The university campus, where she had once walked with hopes and aspirations, now held a memorial in her honor, a tribute to a life that had touched so many. As the years passed, Shannon's case continued to resonate in the hearts and minds of the community. It served as a reminder of the need for vigilance, the importance of community support in times of crisis, and the enduring strength of a family's love. Shannon's story, though marred by tragedy, also became a story of resilience and hope. It inspired others to cherish their loved ones, to fight for justice, and to never lose hope, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. Her legacy lived on, not just as a memory of what had been lost, but as a beacon of what could be achieved in the name of love and justice. And so, as the years turned into decades, Shannon Malayzia's name remained etched in the collective memory of Atlanta, a symbol of both a heartbreaking mystery and an enduring quest for truth and justice. Her spirit, undimmed by the passage of time, continued to inspire, challenge, and remind everyone of the value of every human life.